Hi everyone. In this episode, I'm going to introduce you to deployment slots, also known as staging slots. They are here. Under deployment, you have the option, and if you go there, you will be able to create deployment slots. Right now, because I'm using the F1 tier, I will not be able to create one because it is not supported. If you are using any tiers under deployment, development, or test, you won't be able to use deployment slots. So you have to at least be on S1, which is the standard. So I'm gonna scale up from F1 to S1, and you can see here that it says with S1 tier I can use 5 staging slots or deployment slots. Now that I have scaled up my application, I can go to deployment slots and I can create one. But before creating one, what are deployment slots or staging slots? Deployment slots are live applications with their own separated environment and separated URL, where you can publish your code first, do all your testing there, and then it gives you two options to push your changes or push your updates to your production environment. Note that right now I have only one environment, let's say, which is my production. This is the actual app service. If I go to overview, I can see that it has its own URL, and if I click on it, you will see that I have a simple HTML file with one line of information that says fast-paced tutorials test version 1. Imagine that you want to deploy the version 2 of your application without downtime. That's where you can leverage deployment slots to achieve your goal. The first step is to create a deployment slot, and that is as easy as clicking on the add slot. You have to give it a name. I'm going to call it the staging, and you can choose to clone settings from your existing app service. I'm going to select my production environment, and I'm going to click on add. What it does is that it's going to create another environment for me where I can deploy my code. It's going to be exactly, not exactly, but pretty much same as the app service that I have. It has, pretty much all the options I have here, and then I can connect to it through FTP, or I can deploy to it directly from Visual Studio, and I can deploy my code, and I can test my code there. It is created now. If I click on it, it will open the overview of that deployment slot, and as I said, it's pretty much more or less same as the app service. Note that it has a different URL though. See, it says fast tutorials -staging, and if I click on it, it's different. It shows the default page that you get when you create a new app service. Now what I'm going to do, if I go back here, go back to Deployment Center, I have the same options that I have with an actual app service to deploy my code. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to deploy the version 2 of my HTML file using FTP to this deployment slot, and I'm going to show you how you can release your code or your change to your production without downtime. Okay, I have deployed my version 2 of the simple HTML file that I have to the deployment slot, and if I click on it, you'll see that it says fast-paced tutorials v2, and this is my production v1. Now I'm going to show you how you can move your release package, let's say, from a deployment slot to your production. App services give you two options. One of them is called blue-green or AB deployment. The other one is called canary. I found this great article from Jason Skronsky. I hope I pronounced his name correctly. I'm going to share the URL with you. It is called Intro to Deployment Strategies, where it talks about different release strategies, and it explains how you can do each one of them. But specifically, I'm going to use this article to show you how blue-green or AB deployment and canary deployment work. So this is blue-green, where you have your production environment that has, let's say, the version 1 of your code, and then you have your staging slot here, which you deploy your v2. Again, your deployment slot has its own unique URL, which you can access, and you can test your code there. You can do your regression or end-to-end testing there, and when you're satisfied and confident that the code is good enough to go to production, you can simply do the swap. It means app services will automatically, after swapping, forward all the traffic to your staging slot, and your staging slot or your deployment slot will become the new production, and your production will become a staging slot. Just like this. See, all the traffic at once go to version 2 of your application. And if you decide to do a rollback, it's again as easy as doing another swap. You go again from here to here. You go back and you forward all your traffic to version 1 of your application. Now that is called blue-green or A/B deployment, also known as red-black. If you want to do something like that, you can easily go to deployment slot, click on swap. It will open up a window here where you can choose source and target. Now my target, and it always highlights your production environment like this. My target is my production environment, and my source is my staging deployment slot. If you have a configuration, then it will automatically detect that configuration, and it will preserve the configuration for you. Let's say in your deployment slot, in your staging, you have a different configuration. You're not really connecting to all the backend services and APIs. Maybe you're using a different database, or you're using a different file storage appliance or something. It is possible to preserve the settings and then do the swap. So I don't have any settings, so it's not going to show me anything under config changes. So I just can click on swap. It will take a little bit, but it will happen in real time, meaning your end users won't experience any downtime. So as you can see, the swap operation is now successfully completed. And if I go to my production and do a hard refresh, you'll see that now I have v2 here. And if I go to my staging and do a hard refresh, you'll see that v1 is here. See, they just, app services just swapped these two for me. And if I want to roll back again, I'll do the same thing. I click on swap and I swap them again, and that's how I can roll back if I face a problem. Let's say the release was not successful, I can simply just do it again and it will roll back my changes. The other one is canary, right? Canary deployment is different from A/B or blue-green. The way it works is that instead of swapping the whole thing, you start to forward a portion of your traffic to your new code. Let's say you start with 10% of your traffic, and then gradually you increase the number. Turn it from 10 to 20, 30, 50, 80, 90, and gradually all your users are going to get forwarded to the v2 of your application. The benefit of this strategy is that you can actually test your code in real time and with real users. The way you can achieve this is if you go to deployment slots, then you will see that there is an option called traffic here. Now 100% of the traffic is configured to go to the production slot or production environment. I can just update this value and say 50-50 and click on save. Now if I go to my production, this is v2, and if I do a hard refresh, and now we can see that it gave me v1, and if I continue doing it, you'll see that I'm gonna get v1, v2, v1, v2, because 50% of the traffic is going to deployment slot, the staging deployment slot, sorry, and the other 50 is going to production. And then I can gradually increase this number, make it 80%, save, make it 90%, and then when I make it 100%, that's when all the traffic is going to go to my staging slot. And if I go here and refresh, it's gonna show we won again because I've already swapped it. So we also talked about the fact that each deployment slot has its own unique URL. Now you may say that I don't want anyone to be able to access this URL. Yes, it is hard to find this URL maybe, but still you don't want anyone other than your developers and your tech team to be able to even access this URL. And you can actually achieve this. There is a cool feature under, let me find it, networking, and it's called access restrictions. You can configure access restrictions in a way that only a specific IP address or a specific IP address range can access this specific app service or a specific URL. So right now it says any source can access it. I can add a rule here and note that I can allow or deny. I can simply say, give it a priority and then say IPv6 of my, let's say, office, and then allow it and then deny everything else. Simply this way I can restrict access to my deployment slots to a specific IP address so no one else can access it. Another thing that I would like to point out here is that again, you only get staging slots or deployment slots when you move to one of the production tiers or isolated. In this case, I cannot move to isolated because I have to choose isolated at the time that I am creating my app service. Otherwise, I won't be able to upgrade to it. And note that with different tiers, you'll get different number of staging slots. With S1, I get 5. With P1, V2, 20. And I guess for the other two, it is still 20. If you go to isolated, you get more. But 20 is the max you can get from a production tier. So that was it. Hope you learned something new today.